Good evening, everybody, and welcome to We the People. Tonight, We the People meet Constance Gadell-Newton, who is running as a Green Party candidate for the governorship of Ohio. She's our first Green Party candidate we've had on. I just want to say right now, Jilly Love, this is your episode. And everybody out there who's been waiting for a Green Party candidate, here we go. Very excited because she's actually really cool, got a lot of history doing some very cool stuff, not just for the Green Party, but for democracy overall. So very excited to talk to Constance. Constance, thank you so much for joining us on We the People this evening.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Awesome. And of course, everybody, before we get started, we need to have Laura Livengood come on, and she is going to be our comment moderator, and she will tell you the rules of engagement. Laura, thank you.
Okay, thank you, all of you who are watching live. You are a special part of the show because you get to ask questions directly to the candidate. I'm your vehicle for doing that. If you have a question, a burning question, we will post her website so you can get the basics out of the way. Either write the word question all in caps or tag me at Laura Livengood in chat so that I can see it. Otherwise, I'm really quite concentrating on what she's saying, but I will be happy to relay your questions to her. So bring them on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura. And hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. It's late. There's Constance out on the East Coast. Thank you for doing this. I know it's late there. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, this is really, honestly, this is really cool. And I was telling you in the green room, it's awesome, green room, that I voted for Jill Stein, Green Party. So did Laura Livengood because we were in what we call safe states, right? But tell me why you chose to run. First of all, you're running for a difficult spot to begin with, governorship of Ohio. Why did you choose to do it as a Green Party candidate?
Well, I've been with the Green Party for a long time, so I am a Green Party member. Last year in 2016, I ran for state rep as a Green.
Nice.
I'm also on the Central Committee of the Green Party member. So I've taken a leadership role, and I've been with the party since 2008.
That's awesome. I'm glad you brought that up because you've been doing a lot for the Green Party for, as you said, since 2008. And we were talking earlier about leadership and where things are going, and you said you've been taking a big role in that, trying to get youth involved in the Green Party where you are. But talk about Cynthia McKinney and what happened there in 2008 and how you got involved with that right out of school. Please tell us that story.
Yeah, I graduated in 2000, right when the economy crashed. So there were basically no jobs available, but I came back to my hometown, Columbus, Ohio, and met some folks at the Free Press, the Columbus Free Press, and my law partner, Bob Fitrakis, who's very involved with the Green Party in Ohio. And he was looking for a paralegal or a legal assistant to help work on the election and do election protection. So I actually did a lot of election protection activities that year. And one of the things that I did was write the complaint to get Cynthia McKinney on the ballot for president. And that basically kicked off our party status and was the first time that we really had party status in Ohio. So
that's awesome.
So I was a big part of that. I wasn't an attorney yet, so Bob filed it, and then I continued to work with Bob and the Green Party ever since.
That's fantastic. That's just, that's one of the reasons I like that story is because it tells us how these things happen. Like before, most of it, like me, I really wasn't involved with politics until Bernie Sanders kind of woke me up. And so when we hear people talk about Green Party and ballot access, we go, well, how does that happen? And now we know one way to make it happen is lawyers, right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty awesome.
So in Ohio, I think the rule is that we have to show a modicum of support to be an official political party.
Okay.
So there used to be 5 minor parties in Ohio: the Libertarian Party, the Socialists, the Constitution Party, the Natural Law Party, and the Green Party. And now the Green Party is the only minor party that has been able to successfully maintain our ballot access in Ohio. So we are the last one standing as far as minor parties.
Wow. And what does that mean? So what do you have to get? What are the requirements for ballot access?
For ballot access, we have a shot every 2 years.
Okay.
So we have to get 3% or greater in the presidential race or the governor's race.
Oh,
and when
okay.
we do that, it establishes our party status for the next 4 years. So that's why you always see that we do run somebody in the presidential race and the governor's race. And we will have a lot of other candidates running down ticket in Ohio as well.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, I honestly didn't know that's how it worked. So so does this mean that you are the torchbearer for the next 4 years?
Yes, that would be me. So it's a pretty big race. And
No pressure.
as co-chair and somebody who's been with the party for a long time, I really feel responsibility to carry that on. So we're getting an early start and just doing the best we can.
I think that's phenomenal, and I think I'm just going to say this. I'm really excited about the chances and possibilities of third-party candidates because of what we've seen with the midterms or the special elections that we just had on November 7th. There's some sensational wins that I never would have thought have happened. What did you think of those elections?
It was interesting, a good year this year. I would just say that in Ohio, we had a great candidate running for mayor of East Cleveland. And that was really interesting because in East Cleveland, the city was basically on political lockdown by a group of Democrats. And unfortunately, there was just a lot of corruption and waste in that city. So our candidate, Devin Branch, decided to run an anti-corruption campaign.
Nice.
And he broke into that race, and we were hoping for a win, but he did very well with 33% of the vote, although he did not win.
Wow.
He made a really good showing and built quite a movement in his area, and he put forth a pretty impressive effort.
I mean,
we're proud of him.
33% is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, that's huge. That's what I want to hear when we talk about a three-party race. I want to hear that. That's amazing. I didn't even know that occurred. I mean, that got buried in MSM News, didn't it? Right.
It was actually a two-party race. So it was a Democrat and a Green, but it was still very significant.
Absolutely. That is still significant because usually when we see, and just to be honest, when we see Green Party percentages, they're around the 3 to 6 to 9 to whatever percent. They're pretty low. So that's that's a chunk. I mean, that shows that a Green Party candidate could be competitive against a Democrat.
Yes. Yes, and Devin Branch just kind of came out of the woodwork and decided to run as a Green.
Wow.
And I think that he already had a lot of great community ties. He had fought to save the public library in East Cleveland and keep it independent, and also did led the recall effort for the previous mayor.
Oh, wow.
And that was successful. So he has had some interesting grassroots successes in his area. So, we're proud that he wanted to run as a Green.
That's awesome. That's really encouraging. That really is. I want to talk about something that you kind of highlighted, which is in the green room. We were talking about the way you were talked about in this article. We're talking about your hobbies, right? And that they didn't highlight kind of the work that you'd think you'd want to highlight for somebody going for this job. So let's tell everybody. I'm going to show this slide, and this is basically from your website. And it talks about your role as a working daily with victims of abuse of power and institutional bias and economic inequality. But over here on the other side, there's this little part that says, Constance Gadell-Newton started her experience in criminal law in the office of the prosecutor of the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia in The Hague. I cannot even have that. You worked in The Hague.
Yeah.
You were prosecuting war criminals. That's huge.
Yeah. Yes. So that was during law school, and it was, one of the key values and core pillars of the Green Party is nonviolence. And so I have, been an anti-war activist for a long time. And so part of the reason that I wanted to do international law was to do human rights law or international criminal law. So I studied international criminal law and did get to go have that experience working on a team with the prosecutor prosecuting the general of the Yugoslav army.
Wow.
So that wasn't mentioned in the article.
No.
But I was happy to get any press at all in a way. So We did issue a press release when I decided that I would be running for governor, and it was picked up by the Dispatch, the Columbus Dispatch.
Nice.
And so in my bio, I mentioned a few of my hobbies. I'm very active, so I love community gardening and riding a bicycle, and also do amateur trapeze performance. And it's great upper body work, so I do it partially for the workout and also because I love the artistic expression. And so I have an interesting hobby, but
Right.
they were really kind of focusing on that as a way to make it seem like a frivolous person was running, I think.
Absolutely. And that right there is a very, well, some would call it subtle, some would call it blatant, spinning of the narrative. Turning of the narrative in a way that disparages a person running for office. It looks that way to me. And we saw what you were saying there. Yes, you got notice in the news, but the headline says it all, right? And that's the kind of battle you're fighting, that any progressive seems to be fighting right now. Right?
Yeah. So they basically made me out to be like some kind of circus performer or something.
Right.
But it was, some of the comments that followed that were pretty interesting. Like, well, we already have a clown in the White House, so why not have a trapeze performer for governor?
That's awesome. And honestly, the bar has been lowered so far, right? Even without your experience, your amazing experience as a lawyer prosecuting war criminals, trapeze artists be fine. I think so. That's
right.
More skills than the president.
How bad could I really screw up if I was just a circus performer, right?
I put Laura on because I was wondering if we had any questions right now. Laura, do we have any questions?
No, we don't. No questions yet. I'm sure they will come now that they've been reminded that they can ask them.
That's good. So I just want to tell you, here's your defense. Here's something you can say about the trapeze artists you were talking about, workouts. Because I do yoga, because core, all right? I do that stuff. Point out Trudeau. You've seen a picture of him doing his muscles. Say, look, he's got a strong core. It takes a strong core to prosecute a war criminal, right?
Right.
That's,
Yep.
It's interesting, and I just want to point that out. It's interesting that when a guy does something like that, it's, oh, look at the manly. When a woman does something like that, it's, oh, let's make it frivolous and, right? It's very
obviously
sexist.
There's a double standard there.
Absolutely. And I'm going to say this publicly. I commend you for running Green Party, because we already know how difficult it is for a progressive to run anyway, whether you're taking if you're in one of the major parties. So thank you for this uphill battle. I appreciate you taking it on.
Thank you. And thanks for giving me a little love in the media. I appreciate that a lot.
We're trying.
Of course.
Thank you. We're not CNN, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
No, we don't want to go there.
We're not going to sell our souls to get there. That's the difference. So let's talk about, I just want to show this. This is your race for in 2016, because you ran for a district spot in the 18th district, correct?
Yeah.
So that's really cool. And here's the results of that. I just want to show everybody where they're at here. So you had the Democratic incumbent and then Republican David Todd kind of tossed around that. And then you had enough. Does this count? And this doesn't count to help with the ballot access, because this race wasn't part of that. But still, you had enough to carry it over, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And another thing that we do in our post-election analysis is we look at the cost per vote. So we pull the campaign finance reports for each of the candidates to find out how much their votes cost each. And so the Green Party candidates always have the lowest cost per vote. My cost per vote was 66 cents per vote.
Wow.
And
wow.
And my opponents are definitely spending dollars per vote.
Yes.
We'll just put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because they're bankrolled by big corporate interests and other, other things. Let's talk about some of the issues going on in Ohio. And I've got two that were highlighted in this slide. And the first one is crime victim rights. What's wrong with Ohio is what they've said here. What happened with this bill? You were the Ohio Green Party recommends a no vote on issue 1. Tell us about issue 1 and then issue 2.
Yeah. So I am a criminal defense attorney. So, I'm very concerned with the constitutional rights of the accused and protecting all of our rights. So the Green Party's position in Ohio was looking at the crime victim rights. It does change the Ohio Constitution, and it also puts limitations on evidence that's available to the defense. So, we're really facing a crisis here with criminalization and so many Ohioans being incarcerated. So, I think that we want to protect the Constitution first and foremost, and also just protect the people of Ohio from overzealous prosecution. We have a number of privatized prisons and for-profit prisons. The correction industry is a for-profit industry
Yes.
in Ohio, and my feeling is, that there's a huge conflict of interest when the privatized prisons have to fill their beds in order to make a profit. I think that the moral imperative to punishment doesn't belong with a corporation that is doing it for profit and punishing Ohioans for profit. So I just want to see a more just criminal justice system in Ohio. And I was just a little wary of this proposed change. I think that in Ohio, we already have a lot of protections for victims. I see the prosecutors constantly, communicating with the victims, and there are notification systems if, someone feels that they need to be notified when somebody gets out on parole. That already exists. So we were concerned with the constitutional issue.
Yeah, and I mean, if I just get I agree with you on the victims' rights. From personal experience, I think they're well protected. I don't know the difference between Ohio and other states, but why was it such a strong yes vote? What is the push there on that? Just because victims' rights and it's an automatic sell? Is that?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly the reason. I think that that probably the wording sounded very persuasive, and people, were thinking of it that way. I think there probably was a lot of advertising that was involved in that as well.
Right. Right. Okay. And the bottom line there is really that it makes less evidence available to the defense, which makes it more difficult to defend somebody who might be innocent, who's being prosecuted, or to defend somebody in general. Right. So it's just easier for the prosecutor to do their job, and it's pretty easy for prosecutors to do their job these days, actually.
Yeah, and I also worry that it almost invites abuse, maybe using the court system in a vindictive way if there's a domestic violence situation or something like that, or just something where the crime is like pretty personal.
Right, right, absolutely, absolutely. So now, what about issue 2, drug price standards? Mm-hmm. And this, I don't understand this. Why would they not do this with the opioid crisis, with everything you got going on there? Why would they not do this?
Yeah. Again, it's kind of a mystery. It doesn't seem like a no vote would have been in the interest of the people. We do have a huge opiate crisis, and just access to healthcare in general and the cost of healthcare. It seems like this would have lowered the drug prices. But there were a lot of arguments being made about kind of, the legal fees and backlash of the pharmaceutical companies, I think. Yeah. They're saying, it might actually make it more expensive for some people. So there was a lot of speculation around that. And I would just say that the Green Party, we did recommend a yes vote just because we felt that it would be a positive step. But that was not, that's not our solution to the healthcare crisis. We really support universal healthcare. And even if we can't get at that at the national level, that is part of our platform at the state level, that we would like all Ohioans to be covered and have universal healthcare in Ohio, regardless of whatever is going on in Washington, D.C. We want to make sure that Ohioans have their needs met and can get basic general care, see a physician anytime they want to, that there's sufficient treatment for people who are addicted to opiates.
Right. And
that's something that access to care is just so hard right now. There are waiting lists, or insurance doesn't cover it. And, it has been a huge issue in the Midwest.
Absolutely. Yeah, the opioid epidemic in Ohio in particular is just crazy. Right? I
Yeah.
mean, 32.8% increase from the previous year in 2016, fatalities related. I mean, it seems pretty, in my view, so let's Bernie this. In my view, it seems like we know exactly who's responsible for this epidemic: pharmaceutical companies, insurance companies, and ultimately our government. Do you agree with that? And how do you solve this issue for Ohio?
Yeah. I do agree with that. I feel like as a defense attorney, I could kind of see the writing on the wall. So before people were even talking about that, I
Right.
was noticing that a lot of my clients who had an addiction, their addiction started with a knee surgery
Right.
or, other medical care that they had received. And then they just became addicted to pills. And then after the pills ran out, they shut down the pain clinics and pill mills. And then people were kind of forced to go out onto the street to look for pills, and then heroin was cheaper. So that's really the pattern that I've seen in a lot of cases. So it seems like there's finally an acknowledgement of that. Um, I, so I hope that universal health care could not only help with the treatment, but also the prevention
Yes.
of this, because I think that when there's a profit motive, then the doctors and pharmaceuticals, unfortunately, start to take the role of the drug pushers,
Right.
and
That's
and
what
so
they
that's
are.
what we've really seen when it's a for-profit industry. There's a profit motive above, the moral imperative and the Hippocratic oath that doctors take to protect their clients, to protect their patients, and to act in their best interest.
Absolutely. It's just disgusting what's going on there. And if we had individuals with moral character in our government, they would not let this happen. And that's why you're running. You got to get somebody in there, and you got a lot of people to go up against. We're going to talk about how many people are running that are going to eat each other alive before you have to deal with them. But first,
That's
I
right.
just want to ask you about my favorite kind of green, and that would be this one. How do you feel about cannabis? What do you think about cannabis in terms of medical industry and health? Where do you stand?
Um, Well, so in Ohio, it seems like the consensus is that we do support medical cannabis and recreational cannabis, including, decriminalization and potentially legalization of marijuana.
Great.
Also, industrial hemp is a really
Yes.
useful and practical crop that farmers, can really benefit from if that was legalized in Ohio as well. So I think that as a cash crop, industrial hemp, is a very useful fiber. It's a sustainable, renewable resource that is, um, eco-friendly. So we definitely want to promote that. And then from kind of the criminal justice side of things, I've noticed that alcohol is certainly implicated in a lot of domestic violence cases, but you don't see that with marijuana. So you don't see the kind of behavioral issues that you see with the use of other drugs. Um, and it really just doesn't make sense to keep this substance illegal when it's so widespread. And, traditionally, I think the prosecution of marijuana has been directed against activists and people of color. So there's definitely an unequal enforcement that's at play there. And so I also have read that the private prisons are one of the biggest lobbyists against legalized marijuana. They want to make sure that they keep their beds filled. And
Hmm.
so they're actively lobbying against it to keep marijuana illegal.
Yeah, it's frightening. It seems like we've got this never-ending circle of things that feed into each other, and they're designed that way by our laws and our regulations, or lack thereof. The prison industry. What that's something with cannabis, it's something that's more difficult, it seems, because we have to tackle down on a federal level. But with your prison systems, you can address that at the state level, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are some federal issues that complicate it. And so I think some of that is going to depend on the political climate, whether it's enforced or not.
Okay.
And, but there are certain things that the state can do, including modifying sentencing is one.
Right.
And also just, decriminalization for recreational use at the state level. it can, I guess, still be a federal crime, but the state's not going to necessarily enforce it.
Right, right. And that's, I mean, that a lot of times that happens with law enforcement that just says we're not going to go after it. But,
Mhm.
and when I grew up, that was kind of like Jeffco cops really didn't go after it unless they had to. That was kind of an unspoken rule. But today, where you've got cops that are kind of part of that feed the system, it seems to be the other way around. What I want to bring there is we're talking about criminal justice reform, but I really want to talk about police reform. What do you think we should do? I mean, in Ohio, but about police, they seem too brutal.
Yeah. Yes. So I am an attorney. I do regular criminal defense cases,
Yeah.
but I also represent activists, and I just see a lot of police brutality. And there's a lot that's been happening in Ohio and in Columbus with police shootings, particularly of young Black men. So there was even a shooting of a child. I believe he was like 13, and this happened about 3 blocks away from my house. So this
geez.
issue hits really close to home for me
Right.
because that was in my community. It could have been one of my neighbors, So we've seen a lot of police shootings and a lot of police brutality. And this is something that activists are protesting actively in Columbus, trying for police reform. So I think that, police need to be trained in nonviolent de-escalation tactics, in something kind of like hostage negotiations, where they're trained to minimize the potential for loss of life. Currently, it seems like the way they're trained, they just say that they want to go home safe. So they're shooting before they have all the information a lot of times. Also, in some court cases where they've tried to take these police officers to justice, it's been a defense for the police officer to say that they were afraid.
Right.
And in my community, I live in the city, and a lot of the police officers who come in and police Columbus are not from Columbus. They're from the outer suburbs. They're from out of county. And so they're not familiar with our community. And, if they feel kind of on edge, or if they're not used to seeing African Americans, then that could be triggering for them. I think that a lot of police officers have PTSD and need to be treated for PTSD before they can safely be on the streets.
Wow.
So I think there's a lot that we can do. I think civilian review boards are something that we have talked about in Columbus. Body cameras are kind of new, but that's I think a positive thing, but also gives like a cop's eye view of the situation. So it's I think overall probably a positive thing. But there are a lot of things that we can do that it just seems like the police departments are very resistant to change. They always cover for each other,
Right.
I think.
Right.
The internal policies, if you have a problem with a police officer with police brutality, you have to report it to internal affairs, where it's another police officer investigating it.
Right.
And if you were charged with a crime and you make a statement in your interview for about the police brutality, they can use that against you in your criminal case. So it's a really stacked system against the people. And I think it's a disturbing trend that the police are being trained to see my neighborhood as a war zone.
Right.
And so they're preparing for combat against me and my neighbors. It's really terrifying.
It absolutely is. And I really appreciate your strong words. That's got to be the strongest statement from any candidate we've had on here regarding police brutality and what needs to happen.
Thank you.
I appreciate that because Laura Livengood could tell you, I've lost my mind with it, just seeing what's going on. And I personally have no respect or trust for cops in whole, because to me, it's like a platoon mentality. If you're not going to stand up against the injustices and those that are acting wrong, then you're part of the problem. And it seems like every cop, I hear that they have issues with that. I saw a news story about 2 cops that stood up against it and they were immediately reprimanded. It's like, if that's going to be the reaction of the chief, I thought they were there to serve and protect. How do we make changes? Because every time I get into this discussion, it seems like we get frustrated with where does the power lie? How do we change that in the state of Ohio?
Well, I think that, there may be various strategies, but the Green Party strategy, I think, is to support activists and run candidates. So we have activists on the ground that are working on these issues, and so they're really informed by the people who are the most affected by these issues. In Columbus, we had a program called the Summer Safety Initiative, and it was colloquially known as the Jump Out Boys, because it would be undercover police officers who would come into our Black neighborhood and shoot people sometimes. Trying to arrest criminals, I think they said was their mission statement. So they really have caused a lot of death in Columbus. And so there have been several years of activism and protests around this and requests to city council. And so I believe our mayor finally has decided to end the Summer Safety Initiative. So that was a victory for us.
Great.
And
That's awesome.
I think that we really just need to keep putting on the pressure as activists. The people need to do that. And then it's important to run candidates who bring that message into the political dialogue.
That's awesome. I want to ask you one more question about that, and then we're going to bring Laura Livengood on, because I think we have a multitude of questions that go all the way back to cannabis. But my understanding, we had a conversation on the Progressive Oregon show about district attorneys and about the fact that they're also public servants. Where do they play a role in this? Because aren't they kind of part of that corruption process as well, or can be?
Yeah. Well, so I think sometimes you have overzealous prosecutors who really care about the statistics and their numbers. And then there's another philosophy that the prosecutor could be in a truth-seeking function where they're seeking justice and seeking truth. So, I haven't done a lot of federal work, but it seems like they are talking about that in some of the federal law practice seminars.
No.
And some people will say that they became a prosecutor because they wanted the prosecutorial discretion, so that if somebody really is, not guilty or innocent, that they can dismiss their case, or they can just, go really easy on them.
Interesting. Well, personally, I've never experienced that. But I'm not sure too many people have. Laura Livengood, what questions do we have from the audience?
We've got a variety of questions. Some I'm going to save for when we talk about environment. Maybe we can shift to that next. But Dennis had a really good one. He said, would you consider bringing back Governor Strickland's high-speed rail proposal between the three Cs, Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati, if you're elected?
Okay. We're a very big proponent of sustainable transportation, energy efficient transportation, and also like public resources. So I would absolutely love to have a train that connected the three Cs, and I think that it would make people's lives so much easier as far as commuting. I think that it would be good for the economy. It would create jobs to build it and to run it. And it would allow people to get where they need to go and to be more self-sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Great question.
Good.
Thank you.
You support that. Yeah. I like these questions that are specific to Ohio, but we've got some general ones. Nitsuj2122 is asking a lot of questions about good cops and how we can help them, and bad cops and how we can help them in their toxic work situation and fix the bad cop problems. I think you've kind of covered that fairly well, but he's asked quite a few questions, and I don't want to ignore him or her. I'm sorry.
Thank you. So is there a question? Is there a different question?
If you had anything, just any further thoughts about what you could do in terms of what's your thing? The thing that the reformative? No.
Restorative justice?
Restorative justice.
Are you familiar with restorative justice?
Yeah, I definitely support that.
Awesome.
As far as like supporting police officers to do the right thing, I think that
Yeah.
we can do that with better training. I think that we could do that by having an independent civilian review board so that it's not
Oh,
the police policing themselves. And I think that it would be good to, for people who witness misconduct from their coworkers, a way for them to feel like they can report that safely. So to have a better environment where they can report that. And then as far as restorative justice, that is something that I deal with. So restorative justice may include mediation or apologies or somehow bringing the victim and the perpetrator together so that they can talk about the crime and make amends. So I think that there are especially when we're dealing with juvenile situations,
yes.
not everything needs to be treated as a crime. So, as a juvenile attorney representing kids, sometimes, you see a lot of like fighting at school. And so instead of charging somebody with assault at that point, maybe there could be better community solutions. Um, so yeah, we definitely support that. And
Awesome.
just kind of decriminalizing school altogether. The fact that, in some places there was I heard that there was a 6-year-old who was arrested by the school resource officer for having a temper tantrum in school. And
Wow.
so, she's, there are doubts whether a 6-year-old is even like competent
Right.
to be charged with a crime, for having a temper tantrum. So I think that we need to deal with kids in an age appropriate way, in a way that supports their education. And once they've had contact with the juvenile system, they're more likely to just be kind of put back into the system as an adult.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad you said that. Yeah, restorative justice. I'm pretty big on that. Colorado has been practicing it. They made it law in 2014 that they had to implement restorative justice, and it's based on Longmont, Colorado, which has been doing it for 20 years. And their recidivism rate for crimes, they started with juveniles and went into adults. Their recidivism rate has gone down below 10%, and it's been that way for more
Yeah.
than 10 years. I mean, that's proof positive that it works, but it seems to be difficult to implement on a statewide scale.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep. You got a lot of law and order people out there.
you do. Laura Livengood, you got your hand up. It must be another good question. What we got?
Yeah, well, I want to see if we can shift to environment because Cindy Matthews, who is the person
Great.
who introduced us to you and you to us, is in the audience. She has several questions, and I think they're all good. And if we could do a couple of them, that'd be
Hit him
great.
up.
Great.
Okay. Starting from the top, what would you do to help clean up Ohio's waters, Lake Erie, algae blooms, and the CAFO runoff into our rivers?
Um, yeah, I think that's a super important question. It's a pretty big issue in Ohio. We need to make sure that everybody has clean drinking water because water is necessary for life. So I think the first thing that I would do is, um, you know, we're very much against fracking. So I would like to see a moratorium on fracking and accepting toxic waste into injection wells in Ohio. Um,
Yay.
and then, yeah. So I think, the pesticides and fertilizers, we really want to keep an eye on that. And my running mate, Brett Joseph, is an amazing, he is also an attorney and a professor. And so he teaches environmental sustainability. So he's
Nice.
a very, very knowledgeable environmentalist, and he's studied permaculture. So he would be somebody that I would be looking to, for the correct like environmental policies to protect our water as far as the algae blooms, and a way that we can have those policies that also support farmers. That something that is going to work for people who are working in that field and also be environmentally sustainable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great
Good.
question. Laura, more environment questions?
Yeah, well, I think you answered the fracking question, although she said specifically about the Nexus and Rover pipelines. So if you have anything specific to say about that, and also to add on to that, how about solar and wind power in Ohio?
Yeah. Well, I definitely have a lot to say about solar and wind power, but as for the pipelines, we do oppose them. We really think that we can focus on more sustainable solutions to our energy crisis. And so one of those is wind and solar. And I think that wind farms are a potential for farmers. It's a business opportunity. And what I would really love to see is a lot of worker-owned energy cooperatives popping up. And so in that way, we keep our economy local. We privilege local businesses and worker-owned cooperatives so that the workers are treated fairly and have a stake in what they're creating. So I think that there are possibilities for manufacturing jobs in this field, and that this can be a green industry to make us self-sufficient in Ohio.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I want to take a break in there right there. I'm showing a slide here, and I want to talk about that because you had mentioned it earlier in the green room. They talk about the 10, what are they? The 10 points of being in the Green Party. The four pillars of the Green Party and the 10 key values. You want to talk about that? What those are?
Yeah, the 10 key values. Yeah. So basically, at the Green Party, since we are a newer party and growing, we know that we're going to get a lot of people coming to the Green Party from various different political backgrounds. And we really want to encourage people to check out the Green Party and, become a part of that. So it's important as people are looking at the Green Party to check out the 10 key values, because those are something that we hold near and dear to our hearts. So, yeah.
Yeah, they're there. And I'm looking at right now.
Yeah.
I don't have them in front of you, but it's a pretty simple list,
right.
And it makes sense. They're very Bernie-esque, right? In core.
Right. And so grassroots democracy, social justice, ecological wisdom, and nonviolence are the 4 pillars of the Green Party.
Oh, okay, great.
And then we also have decentralization, community-based economics, feminism, respect for diversity, personal and global responsibility, and future focus and sustainability. So these are really the guiding principles that we follow, that we hold our candidates up to uphold those values. And I think that the Green Party, just to talk about the 4 pillars. Grassroots democracy is super important. As a third party, we are holding the Republicans and Democrats to task, and we're really running a grassroots political party where we want people to participate and be a part of it, and we're not leaving it up to just the party leadership to choose who's going to be an uncontested candidate. I see that a lot here locally, is that a lot of the judges' races, it seems like the 2 parties actually get together and decide who's going to run an uncontested race.
Right.
And they do that with gerrymandering also. So you have the politicians at the top deciding who the candidate is going to be, and not the people who are actually voting for the candidate. So we just want to offer a third party, a third option for people who have good progressive principles. With a Green Party candidate, what you're getting, that we don't accept corporate donations. So we're not bought out from the very beginning.
Right.
So we really want to encourage people to participate in that and to run as candidates and to just be a part of it.
That's awesome.
Awesome. So I can talk more about any one of those key values if you guys have questions, if there's anything about that. I would say that social justice is super important to the Green Party. So, we support Black Lives Matters, and, not just as a political party, but, I represent activists. So, I've represented some of those activists in our community. Some of the activists who were protesting injection wells in Ohio. So protesting the toxic waste that frackers are dumping in our waters. So we really, that's a big deal for us.
It is. I mean, and I just thank you for all that that's extra effort. I mean, you're out there representing these people, and if anybody's going to get a really, grassroots or on the ground view of what's going on, I would think it would be a lawyer who's defending people that are taking on the issues that we face as human beings. That's quite a unique perspective that you get there. Well, we already talked about the intelligence level, just in general, your ability to communicate, and it might be a little bit of a disadvantage considering where we're at in terms of education in this country. I want to just hit on education as a big value there for me. Where does Ohio sit? What do you think we need to do in general with education?
Well, we definitely have our problems here in Ohio. So I would say that, decades after the civil rights movement, we still have de facto segregated schools in Ohio.
Wow.
A lot of that has to do with how the schools are funded based on property taxes and the white flight from the cities to the suburbs. So we still have segregated schools in Ohio. And there's been a greater trend towards privatizing the schools. We have a lot of charter schools, and unfortunately the regulation in Ohio has been very loose. So there's been a lot of fraud and waste in the charter schools, and that's taken money away from the public schools.
Wow.
So I'm a big supporter of public schools. I think that every child deserves to have a good quality education. I'm not super big on teaching towards a test, because if that's your line, then you're not teaching them something additional. I think that it's really important to teach beyond the testing, so that when kids go and take the test, they have way surpassed that. I'd like to see a focus on gifted and talented programs,
nice,
especially for some of our inner city youth. And
yes.
I know that we have a lot of special education. I don't want to, I want to make sure that everybody who has special educational needs are still met. But I also feel like I've seen since the 90s when I was a student, the medicalization of ADHD and all these, behavioral issues.
Yes.
There's oppositional defiance disorder, which basically means you're kind of ornery, or you don't like to follow the rules or whatever.
Yes.
So, I often have to advocate for kids, having less medication. Of course, they'll do what medically needs to be done and everything. But, so I feel like we're treating a lot of kids as special needs that may actually not be special needs, or maybe they're even gifted. So
Agreed.
I would like to see, I would really like to see kids' educational needs, tended with care, and kids given the opportunity so that when they graduate high school, they can actually read.
That'd be nice.
People in Columbus, I mean, that sounds like a low standard, but, unfortunately, there are a lot of people who may graduate not really having the basic skills that they need. So I think that we have a lot to do there. And I think that there's so much waste and fraud and abuse of those funds. Absolutely. That we can return that back to the public schools. So
absolutely.
I would just say, as an independent candidate who has never, I don't have business interests, I don't have conflicts of interest, and that's something that is going to be way different from all of the other candidates.
Right.
That they all have business interests and conflicts of interest and friends that they want to hook up and give those contracts to.
Yep.
And I'm just not going to do it. I want to, I want to advocate for the people and represent the people and do what's best for Ohioans. I don't have any corporate buddies that I'm trying to hook up.
No, you're trying to hook up the people with some services that they paid for.
Yeah.
It's a great idea. I want to say thank you so much as a gate kid from the 70s who was diagnosed with several of those idiotic disorders, except back then they just called me a hyperactive child who was going to be a spaz. Ritalin was given to me in 1972, and I was taken off in 2 weeks. My mother said I'd prefer him spastic than a vegetable. So I agree with you 100%. I think you got a lot of these kids, myself included, we're not ornery, we're bored. We need an education system that is actually challenging, And that's the difference.
They've really cut a lot of the good programs that lead towards having a holistic education.
Yeah.
So many music and arts programs have been cut, and that's something that, kids can go to and have artistic expression. And so if they're feeling a little angsty, they can express themselves through music. So
Right.
we'll hear my song a little bit later. I've
Yes.
known many people who have said punk rock saved my life. And I really think, sometimes when I'm working with kids, I really try to encourage them to express themselves through arts and music.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And look, we had that in public schools when I was growing up. We had, you got PE, you had art, recess, letting kids exercise. Jeez, what a concept, right?
Yeah, I would love to go back to, the older system. Now you have so many kids who are supposedly taking online school, and there has been tons of fraud in that as well, with them reporting that they have so many students and then those students aren't even going to school.
Right.
So I end up representing some of those kids in their truancy cases when they weren't able to log on to the website. It's kind of ridiculous. And I really just think that they need a school building where they can go, where they have a community of teachers who actually care about them as people, counselors, other kids. It's really important for kids to have that social experience. And I know that, bullying has come up as a big issue recently. And so a lot of people seem to be leaving the school building for online school. I just think that there are better ways to deal with that. I think that, school uniforms are a way to, make kids maybe feel less social pressure at school.
Interesting. That's an interesting concept. I'd never even heard of that. I went to both private schools where I had to wear a uniform and public schools where I didn't, and I found all I can tell you is if you make them wear corduroy, they're not going to be happy, because that's what we had was corduroy. You are awesome. I just want to say there are
Thank
so
you.
many questions that have not been answered, and I see all these great questions, and we're not going to get to them because we've only got 8 minutes left, and it's really late where you are. And I want to say, will you come back and talk to us again, please?
I would love to. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity. I know, that Greens have a lot of work to do. So I know that we have a lot of outreach. We're a small party, so we have a lot of, we need people to do things and to be in leadership positions. So that's
awesome.
Something that I'm definitely trying to do in Ohio. We're just trying to, offer people the ability to run and to be involved. We see new county central committees popping up around the state.
Awesome.
We're going to have, I would say, look forward to a record number of candidates in 2018 coming from the Green Party in Ohio. We're really working hard to recruit candidates. And if anybody from Ohio hears this and they're interested in running, we have a lot of opportunities for people to run. You can get on the ballot with as few as 25 signatures. And, if you have any questions, contact us on my website. It's constanceforohio.com. There's a way to contact us. I am happy to, directly reach out to people who are interested in running and give you the tools that you need to run. There's still time to get the signatures turned in by February.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, most people haven't even started a lot of people aren't campaigning yet, right? You're starting early, technically, right?
Yeah.
So, that's fantastic.
Kind of, yeah.
Kind of. I know. Well, we have to. We know. So just take a few minutes, give us a stump speech. Why vote for Constance Gadell-Newton as governor of Ohio?
Well, the Green Party, I don't know where to start. I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. That's all right.
So my name is Constance Gadell-Newton, and I'm the candidate for governor with the Green Party. And we're running on a campaign of universal health care. We want to make sure that Ohioans have their needs met, no matter what is going on in Washington, D.C. So we want to make sure that Ohioans have their needs for health care met with a universal health care system. We want to make sure that we have sensible immigration policies that keep families together. That's been a major issue in Ohio. We've seen a lot of ICE actions.
Right. Yeah.
And we want to make sure that we have a sustainable environment in Ohio and that we protect the water, that we protect the environment for everybody. I've noticed that the focus of the Ohio Department of Natural Resources seems to be exploitation of our natural resources. So I'd like to change that and shift that to conservation. I think that's really imperative. And as far as social justice issues, we are the party that will stand up for women. We'll stand up for people of color. We want to end the police state as it exists in Ohio and make sure that people have the basic freedoms that we're supposed to have. And I would say, why Green Party? We offer an alternative, and we're actively trying to protect democracy, voters a choice and a voice in our democracy. Every day, we're supporting activists to stand up for the issues that we believe in and that are important to all of us. And we don't accept corporate donations. Our donations only come from the people of Ohio, the people that we're representing, and those are the people that we're responsible to. We're not beholden to corporate interests. We want to protect civil liberties and civil rights of Ohioans and promote small, local, and green businesses. Again, we really want to focus on opening up the market for those worker-owned energy cooperatives so that we can take back the economy in Ohio. We want to make sure that we privilege Ohio businesses over out-of-state corporations that take the money out of the state, often getting a lot of tax abatements that take money away from our schools. So we have a lot of issues where we really speak out on the substance of those issues. Green Party activists have practical solutions, and we really want to come up with practical solutions that will work for everybody, and for the 99% of Ohioans.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. I just want to say, I like the idea of practical solutions, but I think you are a badass solution for Ohio governor.
Thank you.
Just the practical's in there, but you're bad. Everybody else agrees. You're just a badass for what you do. I really appreciate you running. Love to have you back. We're going to get out of here with your song. But before we do that, Laura Live and Good, thank you so much for doing everything you do and addressing the comments today. So tell us, Dead Milkman, Punk Rock Girl. Why did you pick that song?
That was suggested by some of my friends. I think that it's supposed to, kind of convey that I'm a bit of a political rebel. And, on that tip, I would just say, I think a lot of people, when they voted for Trump, unfortunately, they were like looking for a rebel, but they were looking for the wrong kind of rebel. He's the wrong kind of rebel. That's what we don't want.
Right.
And so I think that, that we've got the right stuff, that we're rebels in the right way. We want to shake up the system and bring it back to the people. And, a lot of their lyrics of their other songs are just really funny and sarcastic and pretty political if you kind of look in the undertones.
Agreed.
So I'm a big Dead Milkman fan, and so enjoy the song.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for watching us here on We the People. And thank you so much, Constance, for joining us. We look forward to having you back. You were awesome.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
We're going to get out of here with this song. But join us next Monday for Kathy Thomas. She's going to be a candidate for Texas District 25. And then join us for Town Hall for Progressive Democracy, getting ready for 2018. We've got Nina Turner, who is a keynote speaker. We have Gail McLaughlin, who's running for Lieutenant Governor of California. She's going to be a main speaker. And we have the most awesome Joanne Hardesty, who is the president of the NAACP Portland branch, who will be opening this event. And it's an Uphill Media production in partnership with the Progressive Caucus PAC. So it's awesome. Join us for that. That's going to be happening on the 26th. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Dead Milkman, Punk Rock Girl.
One Saturday I took a walk to Zipperhead. I met a girl there, it's young, there's not me dead. Punk rock girl, please look at me. What do you see? Let's travel around the world, just you and me, punk rock girl. I tapped her on the shoulder and said, do you have a bell? She looked at me and smiled and said she did not know. Punk rock girl, give me a chance. Let's go slam dance to a dress like Minnie Pearl, just you and me, punk rock girl. We went to the Philly Pizza Company and ordered some hot tea. The waitress said, well no, we only have it iced. So we jumped up on the table and shouted anarchy. And someone played a Beach Boys song on the jukebox. It was California Dreamin', so we started screaming on such a winter's day. She took me to her parents for a Sunday meal. Her father took one look at me and he began to squeal. Punk rock girl, it makes no sense. Your dad is the vice president, rich as the Duke over